This is your Wednesday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a good day out there today. Got a good show coming up for you. Bob Timmons, who covers outdoors writing and adventures for the Star Tribune, will join me here in a little bit. He has a great piece coming up in Sunday's paper, Sunday's Star Tribune, about a bikepacking adventure he had, gravel biking out in southeast Minnesota, 200-mile grueling trip he took with a couple of friends. He wrote about it, wrote about the experience, wrote about, why he did it, wrote about, what the process entailed, and talked with me a lot about that for the show in advance of that story. So I hope you enjoy that interview with Bob Timmons. Got to get to the Twins game here in a little bit. They lose 6-3 to the Brewers. Couple of downpours interrupting that game. Anybody who was outside in the Twin Cities on Tuesday night saw just the sky was ridiculous. It was like just either any direction you looked, the sky looked different. There were clear patches. There were, pinkish purple patches. There were just storm clouds everywhere. It was very, very threatening sky, and the Twins felt the brunt of that and lost. We'll get to the Miguel Sano's return with the St. Paul Saints as well. Got to get to the Lynx, and a big win for them on Tuesday night, double overtime, even after giving up a couple of leads. Much needed win for them as they try to make a second half playoff push. And I'll get to an NBA rule change that I think is pretty interesting for next season as well. That looks like it is in the works. But first, what did I miss? Wild trades Cam Talbot just a few days after general manager Bill Guerin defiantly said he doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to trade him, when his agent, he said, my team is set right now. Talbot's agent had said to TSN at the draft that Guerin had a lot to think about after Wild general manager Bill Guerin signed Marc-Andre Fleury to that 2-year contract. Created a certain amount of tension, it would seem, in the goalie room. Now, these two goalies, got along fine after Fleury was acquired late last season for the playoff push, but then Fleury played the bulk of the playoff games, the first 5, before Talbot got the nod in Game 6, the elimination game that they lost to St. Louis. And then, with Fleury getting re-signed for 2 years and Talbot being on the final year of his contract, Wild decided to trade him to Ottawa. They do get a backup goalie in the process, Philip Gustafsson. Not great numbers for Ottawa last year, but sounds like they are high on him. Think he can be the backup. He was 5-12-1 with a 3.55 goals against average and an .892 save percentage. But I'll dig into maybe for some writing later. I'll dig into some of his advanced stats and see if there's more to like, because it seems like the Wild do like the 24-year-old Swedish goalie, and sometimes it does take those young goalies a little while to come along. But the biggest thing here is, again, addition by subtraction might be the wrong word, because I don't think Cam Talbot would have been necessarily a problem had they chosen to keep both goalies. I think they could have made it work. Talbot would have been a professional, would have done a credible job in net. But, Bill Guerin met with the media Tuesday and kind of explained, the rationale behind making this move and why to do it now. So let's listen to Bill Guerin's thoughts on that.
I just felt over what's transpired over the last little while, with the signing of Marc-Andre Fleury, that, it was probably best to just move in a different direction with Cam. That way there's no, there's no drama, there's no controversy or anything like that. We just felt that it was best at this time. A gut feeling. Cam and I actually had a very good conversation. Him and I actually gotten to know each other rather well over the last couple of years. And, sometimes you just, in your gut that things might not work out and somebody might not be happy. And it's, I don't want a player to be like that either. And sometimes it's best to just move on. And, like I said, there was no drama. We didn't want to create drama. I know Cam, he's a no BS guy, and so am I. So let's just try to make everybody happy here, and we'll just part ways. But I have a ton of respect for Cam.
So a little bit of like mixed messaging there, because he's saying he doesn't want there to be drama. I think everybody can acknowledge that there had the potential to be some uncomfortability in the room, as they like to say. Whatever the feeling is in the locker room, that had the potential to go in a I don't know, like it wouldn't have been a super bad direction, like I said, because Cam Talbot is a pro. Whoever was playing that night, Talbot or Fleury, would have been fine, and the goalies are a little bit separate from everybody else anyway. But, Guerin's also acknowledging that this is not, that the Fleury, re-signing Fleury is not what Talbot wanted. He wanted to be the number one goalie here. He should have that opportunity in Ottawa, and now Fleury is the undisputed number one goalie here. Now, was that the right goalie decision for the Wild? Because I think we can point to Cam Talbot and some of his inconsistency last season as, the reason they got Fleury, that they traded for Fleury, traded Kaapo Kähkönen, got Fleury. But Talbot really did solidify this position when he arrived in the 2020-21 season. He played 33 games in that shortened 56-game season, 19-8-5, a .915 save percentage, 263 goals against average. Last year was quite good. Again, he was an all-star last year, if you don't remember. 48 starts. He was 32, 12, and 4. Again, 911 save percentage, 276 goals against average. I don't think he was great last year. And maybe the Wild's offensive output, covered up some of his problems, but he, by and large, was a good goalie here, solidified that position after it had been going downhill. It felt like he was a good bridge goalie, a good, got them into the playoffs a couple years in a row, was certainly a factor in getting them there. Now, Marc-Andre Fleury obviously has the pedigree. He's won 3 Stanley Cups, and as recently as the 2021 season, posted a 1.98 goals against average. Last year was about like Talbot, and when he arrived here, he was 9-2 with a 2.74 goals against average and that 910 save percentage. So maybe as players, they're about the same at this point in the career. The difference maybe being that Fleury will turn 38 in November. Talbot a little bit younger. He just turned 35 about a week ago. So both of them veterans, clearly. So this is just a direction they obviously chose to go. And obviously their future is, the future is not Marc-Andre Fleury forever. The Wild took Jesper Wallstedt in the first round of the 2021 draft, 20th overall goalie. And, when you do that, you are banking on that player being your goalie of the future. But still, he was, 18 when he was drafted. He's not going to be here probably anytime soon, a very young goalie. So that's, so that piece of it, you've got to think of ways down the road. So, but this clearly makes Fleury the number one goalie next year. This will not be a tandem, probably. This will probably be more of a traditional NHL split where Fleury plays like 65 to 70% of the games and the rest are handled by someone else, presumably the player they just acquired in this trade, assuming they like him enough, Gustafsson. So we will see, but the drama is still present until the Kirill Kaprizov situation is cleared up. But in terms of the goalie situation, yes, they have cleared it up, and we will find out as the season goes along if it was the right goaltending move.
Switch your checking account to Royal Credit Union and discover a better way to bank. Royal Credit Union is a financial co-op, not a corporation, so we return earnings to our members. That means you get low or no fees for account services and better rates on deposits and loans. You'll also have all the digital tools you need at your fingertips, so managing your account is easy. Royal is ready to help you discover the credit union difference. Switch your checking account to Royal Credit Union today at rcu.org/yourchecking. Insured by NCUA.
I want to get to Bob Timmons here in just a couple minutes, but let's talk Twins for a moment. They lose 6-3 to the Brewers. Like I said at the jump, a game with 2 rain delays. Just couldn't really get untracked in that game. Just trying to, they were doing their best, but it was just not. It was not their game. The Brewers, put up 2 right away in the first inning. The Twins got it back to 2-2 after 4, but then Milwaukee gets 3 in the 5th, and that's kind of it for them. Josh Winder, who had been going pretty well, just I don't think he pitched terribly overall, but gave up a couple of big hits. Goes 5 innings, 4 hits, 5 runs in that game. The big blows for the Brewers, obviously being Andrew McCutchen home run in the first inning, and then another home run in the 5th that gave the Brewers that 5-2 lead. So that, disappointing for the Twins. Just won. They're right back at it this afternoon to finish off the series before those 4 very important games against the White Sox. Probably more interestingly, in the big picture for the Twins, Miguel Sano made his return on a rehab assignment with the St. Paul Saints. Only got a couple of at-bats because of the rain. That game, the Saints game, was suspended by rain. They did not continue it, but he did walked in the first inning and scored a run, then doubled to right center, 2-run double to right center in the second inning. So he did get 2 at-bats in that game. Patrick Royce was over there, said, Miguel looking trim, took batting practice, just reading from his column, made a jovial walk down a hall, told an employee that his surgically repaired left knee felt good, really good, declined an interview from a Strib correspondent, and waited out a rain delay to get in some at-bats while hitting third as the DH for the Saints. No specific timeline from his return. Still reading from the Royce column, the Twins were saying 11 miles away in Minneapolis. And it's fair to wonder if and when he will return. This is the last year he is under contract. Have we seen the last of him in a Twins uniform? Will he work his way back into the mix as the year goes along? Good questions there. I guess we'll find out more as time goes on, but Sano, kind of the forgotten man, and now working his way back a little bit into our consciousness.
I am happy to be joined today by Bob Timmons. Does a great job writing about the outdoors for the Star Tribune. Has a great piece coming up in this Sunday's paper on a bikepacking trip he and 2 friends took. 200 miles, gravel roads, kind of unrelenting sun, big hills. Bob, I hope you fully recovered. It was a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah. I think my legs are back. I've been on the bike. I will say some of the the guys I was with, Dan and Tim, we were all kind of like, not to go too deep, but the sort of saddle sore thing, like, sure. I'm not ready to get back on a bike anytime quick. But no, it was an amazing experience, and in a beautiful part of the state that I think kind of, except for the people who live down there and people who explore and know it, it's kind of flies under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, so this is more in the southeast part of the state, yeah. Is that right?
Yep, it's an area called the Driftless, and Driftless area. A lot of people probably know it as the hills or bluff country. Really, anytime you're headed down the Mississippi River Valley toward Winona, La Crosse, any of that way, you can't help but see the the beauty of the bluffs and so forth. And so we were riding all those ridge tops and dropping in, having crazy 2-mile long descents, into valleys, and it was just it was amazing.
So maybe we can start at the beginning, kind of what sparked the idea to want to do this trip, which, kind of combines maybe some elements of some things folks have been up to as far as outdoor adventures go. Yeah,
Ramball, I, like a lot of us, we sort of like backpacking figuratively on a great idea. I read about a guy named Rick Pirtle from Bloomington, who's a really interesting guy and a longtime gravel rider, wrote a piece in the Parks and Trails Council magazine, Minnesota Trails, about this trip. And, as I get into the story a little bit, gravel riding is sort of evolved like a lot of sports and recreation can evolve, cyclists looking for different places to go. And let's, don't always have to mountain bike or road bike. And hey, we got these gravel roads that have, from the early times, these gravel roads have always been there. And Rick wrote a great piece about he and a friend who go down to this part of southeastern Minnesota and decided to stay in cabins, something they learned from previous trips, like, hey, we should stay in a cabin sometime, get out of the weather, et cetera, et cetera. And Rick realized he could patch, these three state parks together, knowing it would be a lot of mileage and, over 3 days and so forth. But again, we just, Tim and Dan, my buddies, the three of us kind of ripped off their idea and did our thing. And Rick was helpful too, going into it and sharing some details about just logistical things.
The writing itself sounds like it was pretty, intense. You describe it in the lead, and I'm sure people will read it in this Sunday's paper. I got a sneak peek of it, obviously, before I talked to you, but just, the uphills, it was almost absurd at some points, right?
Yeah, we had climbs that were, we'd be in these upland areas, just amazing, seeing the corn rows in towns, water towers, farms, kind of specking the horizon, just these beautiful upland areas that were hilly and could be hilly in their own right, of course, rises and climbs, but we'd also have these, we'd get into these valleys and have 1.5 2-mile uphills. But, we'd also have these amazing, you'd come around a corner at times and suddenly you'd be dropping 1.5 to 2 miles, ripping through gravel at 25, 30 miles an hour. So, there were parts of it that were really like adrenaline pumping fun, but you also got punished too. You knew anytime we'd have a great descent, it was like, well, we're going to be climbing here at some point. It's time to go back up. And conversely, anytime we had a massive climb and our heart rates were spiking, we knew we were probably going to have a pretty good drop too. So
what kind of gear do you need for something like this? I think you and I talked before we started recording. You didn't necessarily write this like hey, everybody go try this. It was more of a, here was my experience. Here's something that I got out of this. But I imagine when all you've got is your bike and your backpack, you got to travel fairly light, but you got to have a pretty, your bike is kind of your key instrument there.
Yeah. That's a really good question, because I was, I don't want to give away too much, but I do write in the story, and anyone who cycles, who does anything on a bike, doesn't matter if you're doing something arguably extreme or just going for a roll with your kids, you slow down. And the bike was a great tool, a great way to really explore this part of the state, and then being on back roads, we were really kind of digging in and going to areas that you just knew would be are untouched, but for the people that live there. But it was the bike. My buddies, gravel bikes I could look up stats, later today, but last I saw, gravel bikes are some of the biggest sellers in the bike industry. And you got bigger tires, larger tires, kind of a wider wheelbase. So they're these bikes that are sort of built, you can take them on the roads, but they're really built for like absorbing the gravel, the rocky stuff. And I was on a mountain bike that I kind of modified my tires so they weren't like aggressive mountain bike tires, so I could kind of absorb things too. But yeah, you don't have to go out and buy a $3,000 gravel bike to do something like this, or just to even go for a roll on gravel roads. It just takes a little homework and just sort of making it up, kind of like we did. We used some online tools and just knew again what Rick Pirtle's experience was, and we kind of patched it together. So
when you've got the three of you, are you able to, are there stretches where you can have kind of conversations and share experiences, or are you working so hard the whole time that it's kind of like, hey, let's all get through it and then we'll rest at camp later on?
Yeah. Well, we did. I will say we weren't surprised going into this. We knew it was going to be really tough and intense because, like I said, we've ridden down there on our road bikes. But gravel, you're adding another dimension and have more end gear on your bike too. So instead of a light road bike, we've got, I've got a dry clothes for later that night. I've got food. I've got, a blanket and a pillow, light pillow. So I maybe had like 15 pounds of stuff on my bike, but the beauty of staying in, sorry if I'm digressing.
No, it's great.
The beauty of our trip is that we stayed in camper cabins, which allowed us to pack less. So we didn't pack cookware, we didn't pack sleeping bags, didn't pack, those sorts of things, because we knew we'd be on bunks in camper cabins out of the weather, no tents. We didn't have to pack a tent. So suddenly we were a little lighter. We basically ate on the road. So we would stop at, you'd hit a Quick Trip and have a chicken sandwich and a Gatorade and a bag of chips and a Cliff Bar or whatever. We stopped at a few cafes and had, meals. We were constantly being mindful of water. We're burning through water, of course, and park pumps, public buildings, the kindness of strangers. I had a really funny experience. We came into Fillmore on the last day. So we were like southwest of Chatfield, if you know Rochester, and working your way toward Lanesboro. And, Fillmore's a little village township. And we were hoping maybe there's, we couldn't tell from the map, even from Googling, whether there'd be a place to stop for water. And sure enough, there wasn't. And we still had several good 10, 12 miles to get to Chatfield. So I knocked on a door, we looked for like open garage doors and thought, and a guy named Baker, I kind of rattled his grandkids like, Grandpa, there's some guy out here with a bike, and Baker came to the door, and I said something like, I really could use some water if you don't mind. And he said, there's water all around here. And which was really funny because all we did is ride by creeks, the Root River, this whole driftless region, from a geographic, if you really want to dig in, it's all carved by water. It's all veined with streams and springs. And so he was giving me the business a little bit, and then he waved me in and we had a great conversation in his kitchen and let me fill up at his fridge tap. So yeah, we had just experiences like that were really cool and meaningful.
That sounds amazing, Bob. Last couple things for you. I mean, as you kind of think about the trip and you've kind of reflected on it, and obviously when you write about it, you reflect on it. What about it? I mean, what about it maybe stands out the most, or what about the experience do you feel like you will keep with you the most?
Yeah, that's another good question. And I've been reflecting on that. I think we all, Tim, Dan, and I were all reminded, sort of a new appreciation for this area of Minnesota, certainly, and slow, even though we were going hard and going fast at times, but like really slowing down and seeing people at work, seeing people live their lives, seeing the stunning verdant crops and, these remote areas in a whole new way. And then I guess the other part too is, there was this sort of personal, we're all people who like you, Mike, and like Minnesotans that are listening to this, we all have our things that we're into and test us in certain ways, hobbies. And this, Dan, Tim and I are all, late 50s, early 60s. And, it was sort of like testing us too. We think we know we can cycle hard and we can camp and do these things, but this was a new thing for us. And in a new way with the gravel, really digging into the gravel part. And so, yeah, it was a test for us too, kind of like older guys trying to kind of hang on to their passions and things. So in that regard, we came through. I mean, it was physically, it was tough. It was intense, but we never had a bad mechanical, we kept, the balance of it is we had all these like moments of kindness, kind strangers, or, all these sorts of things that happen to us when we're in the outdoors. Anybody, speaking about anybody, you just kind of we went into it eyes wide open and, things were intense, but it was just in total an amazing time.
Any big projects or, experiences coming up, or are you going to kind of take it easy for a little while?
Yeah, definitely going to camp a little bit more my wife and I, and even my daughter Katie, our youngest, looking for opportunities to just camp before the summer's out and hit some of our, not just, we have wonderful state parks, we also have wonderful state forests, national forests. There's a lot of places to go, and just to find that sort of peace. So yeah, looking forward to that.
It seems like a lot of people are still looking for those state park experiences. I think you and I talked about that maybe last year sometime, just as, there was, as the pandemic was happening, but it feels like that is still a very big thing. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I do think, some of the overnights, the way the state kind of tabulates camping, they refer to them as overnight occupancy and things. I think some of the overnights have maybe diminished a little bit, even the way some of the, like, buying the toys and things have diminished a little bit. And, but no, people are still, in general, people are still heading to the outdoors for refuge. Yeah. I mean, again, just to separate in our mad world, I guess,
plugged in world. Yeah.
Yes. Plugged in world.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, great story. Look for that in Sunday's paper. Congrats on finishing the ride, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Ramball. Take care.
Great talking to Bob Timmons as always. Bob does a great job, like I said, writing about the outdoors. He articulates things very well, I feel like, on this podcast as well. Always thoughtful, interesting answers whenever he's been on. And whenever he's on, I feel like I get this kind of spirit of adventure. I don't know if I want to go ride a bike 200 miles right now. Cycling is not so much what I do, but just kind of getting out in nature again, going for a long hike, a long run, something like that. Maybe that'll be part of my day today after getting fired up talking to Bob Timmons about his upcoming Sunday story and his recent adventure on those gravel trails. Let's move on. The Lynx got a big win. Almost felt like they won 3 times in this game because of how the game transpired. They beat Phoenix. They had a 13-point lead, I believe, in regulation, but let it get away. Phoenix forces overtime. They had a 5-point lead with 2 minutes left in the first overtime, lost that. Kent Youngblood describes it as an unnecessary marathon, but they ended it with a sprint. That's a good little turn of phrase. They wound up 15-4 edge in that second overtime. Finally put Phoenix away. A badly needed win because those two teams close in the WNBA standings. The Lynx, of course, after that terrible 13-3 start, trying to furiously scramble and get back up into that number 8 spot at least to qualify for the postseason. And now, after this game, looks like a lot of the teams they were chasing lost or have lost recently. So now, the Lynx still have the second worst record in the league, but they're only a half a game out of 10th, a half a game out of 9th now because of Phoenix, and still just a game and a half now out of 8th. So watch for that. This is a team that put itself in a pretty big, sizable hole. Not sure if they can climb all the way out of it, but they're doing their best right now. They're 6-2 in their last 8 games, won this one, a very important game, and we'll see where they can take it from here. Let's finish with the cooler. An NBA rule that absolutely drives me nuts might be going away soon. I was reading ESPN story, Adam Silver talking about the bigger part of the story was about the age limit for players perhaps going down from 19 to 18, but the part that caught my attention more was that these fouls in transition, when a team gets out in transition and there's one defender back and he just basically makes a half-hearted play at the ball, fouls the player who is, probably going to start a 2-on-1 or is going to get himself into a clear path situation, but it's before the clear path. Those fouls have just been common fouls, and it's been called a good strategy. You take the foul, you make the team reset, get a basket in the half-court offense. Well, now if you make a foul like that, it sounds like the rule would change that if the defender not making a play on the ball, the other team would get one free throw, which could be attempted by any player on the team who is in the game when the foul is committed. So almost like a technical foul, not called a technical foul, so it's not like a penalty of threat of getting ejected from the game, but it'll be treated essentially like a technical foul instead of just a common foul. And that to me is a good step in the right direction because you should not be penalized. The team taking an obvious foul should not gain an advantage just by doing that. You should get some benefit from, getting out in transition and having a transition opportunity. So I hope this rule sticks, and I hope that they reap the benefits of it next year in the NBA. That will do it for me here today. Expecting to have Phil Miller on Thursday's podcast to wrap up that Brewers series and to look ahead to that big 4-game series between the Twins and the White Sox. And hoping to have Minnesota United manager Adrian Heath on Friday's show to talk Loons, to talk Everton, his old club. They are playing them in a friendly in a few days, so that would be a fun one as well. Still finalizing the details on that one, though, so hold tight on that. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Be back at it again tomorrow.